William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. A little disclaimer, this doesn't talk about the life of Julius Caesar, neither should you take this as an accurate representation of what actually happened during the time Julius Caesar was alive. This is one of the times when William Shakespeare himself has just written a play that was supposed to be somewhat historical, somewhat educational, but also somewhat humorous. So without further ado, let's start off with a summary of Act 1 all the way to Act 2. Now, little note, Julius Caesar barely comes in this play a lot. In fact, the total amount of lines he spoke was like 160 to 165 lines, depends on which version you're using. And within all these lines, though, he still has the will and the influence over the entire play. In fact, even after his death, he still has the influence of his play. But I'll talk more about that in the analysis. Let's start off with our summary of Act 1 and Act 2. So Act 1 starts off with our pals, Brutus and the other consul. And Flavius and Marcellus, where first of all, Brutus doesn't come in the first scene, so this is technically Flavius and this is Marcellus. They go ahead and they talk about like the entirety saying about Caesar, how he's going up in his life, how he came up to this point, and their opinions of him, which isn't that high. They think of him as somewhat of a tyrant, that something has to be done about him. And afterwards, they go ahead and exit about that. Then we get to finally meet our very own Julius Caesar, the very, very great emperor, or at least consul of life, Julius Caesar. Now, Julius Caesar is consul of life right now, and he has a best pal, and the pal's name is Brutus. Now, Brutus is all right here, and he's all like, yeah, Caesar, I think you really... they talk about stuff. I'm not going to finish that sentence, but I think you really that is not relevant. What happens here, though, is that Julius Caesar himself goes ahead and thinks of lots of things to go through. He thinks about, hey, maybe this isn't the best way to work out. Maybe I should go ahead and go to this consul thing. And then he loves his power, though. He loves the status of his life right now, and he's all like, this is going to be an awesome day. And then he meets this guy. Or I suppose this woman, the soothsayer. I always imagine the soothsayer as a woman for some reason. The soothsayer, and then she's all like, speak, commoner, tell me. Julius Caesar asked her to say that, like, speak, commoner, tell me, and a fortune about me. And then the soothsayer says, beware the eyes of March, or Bitium, as I like to say it. Say that again, beware the Ides of March. And the Brutus is like, she's saying that you should beware the Ides of March, which is actually coming quite soon. So, nah. And he's like, yeah, what a lot of nonsense. So, Sarah, get out of here. And then he goes away, and he's all like, yeah, maybe this is going to go out really fine. And he's thinking a lot, and decides to do nothing about it. Julius Caesar is Julius Caesar in the end, and he's still the ambitious little person that he is. And despite the fact that he is the title character, he is not the main character. Here we get to talk about Brutus. Now Brutus is right over here, and he's all like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. This is not an awesome day. I have like several thoughts about all this, and we learn more about him as we go on with the soliloquies. He goes ahead and meets the other consuls without Julius Caesar in like private, and then they're all like, yeah, Brutus, so we're going to go ahead and assassinate Caesar. So how are we going to do this at all? Well, here's the thing, we plan on going to the next meeting, which is on the Ides of March. He's like, oh dang, the soothsayer said all that, didn't she? And then they talk more about it, and we find Julius Caesar having a little contemplation about his own power, but we never actually learn about how he came out here. If you know nothing about history of Julius Caesar before you reading this play, or watching it for that matter, you're in for a rough and wild ride. They're all here talking with each other about how Julius Caesar is going to be killed, how much of a tyrant he is, and what they're going to do about it. And they invite Brutus to come and help assassinate him. And he's all like, is this moral? Is this bad? Is this good? Will the gods kill me? Is Olympus going to move? That kind of stuff. Well, after lots of debate, he finally agrees towards helping with the assassination. And because now that he's helping the assassination, he's technically one of the betrayers of Julius Caesar, even though he was the greatest friend Julius Caesar could arguably have ever had. And as much as I'd love to continue on, that is the end of Act 1 and Act 2 of Julius Caesar. Like, I could probably just do a full book summary about all this, but then I decided that maybe I should talk about the rest of the book later. But hey, it ties in like this. That's how it ends. So that is the end of Shakespeare's summary, Julius Caesar, and Act 1 and Act 2. And next time we'll be talking about Act 3, 4, and 5. Mainly because that's when the next part of the story happens. Bye bye.